Hi, everybody. It's Helen Taylor here, and I'm here once again with Kath. Hi, Kath.
Hi.
Okay. And we've got some exciting news. Here I am talking about writing the book and the book about significant events that happened in my life and the outcome of those events. Um, and what I'm about to talk about today is part of, well, it's a significant part of what the book's all about, is how sometimes we've got to make that leap of faith and make that commitment or make that decision, because otherwise the mind, tricky little thing that it is, can get in the way, and it can get so exquisitely in the way.
Yes, it can.
It's a nice word, isn't it? Exquisitely. The mind would love that. Um, so I've made the ultimate commitment to write the book, and the people I'm working with have a process that they call the 48-hour retreat, the author's retreat, where you actually write out the book or talk out the book in a 48-hour period. And of course, I've done some groundwork up to then. I've, done some work by myself, going back into the past and sequencing things. I did some work with another fella that I worked with last year, looking at a different way of addressing things. I've done the work with you, Kath, that, we've done this year, which has probably been some of the deeper work and the more significant work, I would say, because, we've both cried and laughed and all of that sort of stuff. But now it's time to make the commitment. So 9th to 11th of May is when I'm doing this 48-hour process. And pretty much you smash out the book, you do pre-sales, it then gets transcribed, edited, you get your cover done, your printing done, and then it gets released.
That's
And
a lot in 48 hours.
oh, no, sorry.
No, I know, I'm teasing.
Well, you probably need to, because people are probably thinking the same thing, right? No, you smash out the book in the 48 hours, and then post that, it gets transcribed and edited and all that sort of stuff. And that's me just getting my head around which way, the sequence of events that's going to happen. But I had to make this commitment because my mind was getting in the way and playing tricks on me.
But tell me more about that.
Well, that's what I was going to just say. You and I had a conversation about that, because the mind can make things look so real, so real. It can even create chemicals in your body that make feelings so real. Feelings and thoughts and dreams and ideas all seem so real that it's actually the mind getting in the way. Now, I know that sounds so bloody confusing. However, the book shows time and time again how I've caught myself out and addressed that. So I don't expect anybody to just pick it up straight away. Sometimes it is easy to catch your mind out where it's trying to make you avoid doing something. Yeah.
Sometimes, yes. And then it gets trickier and cleverer, and I don't know, it depends, I think, on the issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as you plow your way through the little fears and the medium fears and all that sort of stuff, it gets smarter and smarter on how to get you to avoid, making commitments in what seems to be at the time a difficult or a hard direction. But something sparked for me only a few days ago when I realized that how much more did I have to prepare? How much more did I have to talk through the stories to be ready? And I know from experience that when I'm doing that, trying to get that perfection or that sequence and get it right, that's the mind. Yeah, stepping right in the way. And as soon as I realized that, I started looking back on the reason why I had delayed certain parts of this process. And, I didn't even want to do the retreat thing online because my mind told me that I didn't want to be part of a pack of stupid women online doing some retreat. I mean, when I look back at that thought, how didn't I pick that up as so bloody arrogant
Mm,
that it wasn't me?
yeah.
It wasn't the truth about me. Yeah. And that was one of many things that I started to pick up. But then, as I discussed with you the other day, you know, guys, when your mind's in the way, when something's in the way, life has an amazing way of getting you to see it if you're ready. And remember what I said to you? I had that memory of my friend's wedding
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
all those years ago. And at that wedding, I'd been asked to read a story. It was just a beautiful, funny, and significant story that all I had to do was read out at a wedding, right? Stand up the front with the mic and do it. But there was such a fear in me to do that.
Yeah.
It was such a fear that what I remembered the other day was um, I was traumatized, terrorized, full of terror about having to do this talk to the point of nearly being paralyzed.
Mm.
Couldn't think, couldn't breathe. So I went down there to that wedding and stayed in some accommodation the night before and woke up the next morning with, like these huge butterflies in my stomach, like huge. I was so obsessed of I couldn't focus on anything else, but I was going to have to talk that day.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I knew that I had to do something because this thing was so big, I didn't know how I was going to deal with it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and I think, I mean, for me, it's so clear that the mind hijacks the body. Like it makes you feel that tremendous fear, that butterflies, that overwhelming sensation.
Yeah, it captured me completely. I
Yeah.
couldn't focus on anything else. I couldn't even eat breakfast.
Yeah.
I couldn't think. I was trying to think of other things, even like going for a walk or whatever. I couldn't.
Mm.
It had me. It had me, right? By the short and curlies. It had me. And I knew I had to do something to address it. So I went down to the breakfast room and there were two women in there with a couple of kids each. And they were just finishing up breakfast. And, I had this light bulb moment of speak to them, tell it to them. So I did.
Mhm.
I asked them if it was okay. I said I had this talk to do and I didn't know if I was ready, and would they listen to it? And so they went, yeah, absolutely. So I did the whole thing. I read through the whole story or dialogue I was going to do at the wedding to them, and they clapped and went, oh my God, that was lovely, and all the rest of it. So the butterfly got a little smaller.
Mm.
Didn't quite go away, but it got a little smaller. And you could analyze all of that and go, is it a fear of public speaking, or is it wanting to get it perfect? Is it not wanting to mess it up for my friend and her new husband? I don't know. I mean, to me, it wasn't that important. It was just important overcoming it somehow, right? So here's the reminder the other day, like all of a sudden, life itself reminds me of that event. That then triggers for me to go, oh my God, is that in the way again for me
Mm.
writing the book? Which is why I then went, you know what, if I don't give this a crack right now, will this get bigger? Will this continue to be in the way? I don't know. So that's why I made the commitment. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's an interesting point, like talking about will it get in the way? Because it will get legs, right? We've already talked about this in previous podcasts, but how the mind takes that issue and then builds on it and builds on it and adds bullshit and stories and whatever else on top of it.
Mm. And I think For me, when fear builds to this point, and that's just categorizing it under one title, right? Because I don't know, it's got all sorts of dimensions to it. When it builds to this point, now this the way I see it, the way I look at it, that when it's so intense, it tells me I'm on the right track.
Mm.
It tells me that I'm about to do something really significant. Because otherwise, why would something be trying to stop me?
Yeah.
That's how I now look at it. I didn't always look at it that way, but over time I've got, to try and test it out and realize that actually when it gets this intense, it's really important.
Mm.
Yeah. For whatever reason, I don't know. I don't care to know all of that. It's just like when something gets in your way that looks like some big looming demon or monster, it's like, something important's going down here.
Yes. Following the fear.
That was a knowing comment, Kath.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was just reflecting on my past, and it was a saying I had for a very long time, and I had forgotten it. I'd forgotten that the fear leads to beautiful things. But I think the thing that I'm realizing now in looking in reflection is not to put an expectation on it, which you just addressed then. It's like, you're going to do this. We don't know what the outcome of doing it is, but it's always about taking steps. It's always about the oh my gosh, I'm having a mental blank on what we call it, but the rite of passage.
Yep.
And the fear is like a big, hey, pointing this way, go in this direction, even though it's trying to tell you to not go in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my point with this one is too that it sideswiped me. And I've been very good at, for a long time now, addressing the mind getting in the way, because the mind, you asked me this during the week, how do you know when it's the mind? Well, my defining point for that reference point is that when the mind doesn't talk always in good, kind, loving ways.
Yeah. Rarely.
That's been my defining point, right? It's like if there's pressure, if there's urgency, if there's time involved, if there's, just language that's, judging you or others or whatever, that's the mind. It's the mind. So the heart or God or life or whatever you want to call it talks in a completely different language.
Yes.
That was just the quiet message that I got, after I realized that there was this fear looming around. This quiet message was, book in for me. It was just that simple. Book in for me. And as soon as I made that commitment, then, as you said before, step by step, the next step was that all of a sudden it was being revealed what was getting in my way. And I'm like, oh, there you are. Whatever you are, right? It had been quietly just talking to me the whole way through, going, no, you're not ready yet. Oh, you've got to find another way. You've got to go a little deeper into yourself. You don't want to do a retreat with a pack of other women. Like, how silly is all of that? It was really just, in an indirect way, leading me down another path.
And I think, the key is it wasn't kind, loving thoughts.
No.
That wasn't. And I'm just sort of, piecing together. It's like you talk about the language of the heart and the soul and God, or I don't know what terminology you just used, but, the language of that, it's not even like the mind for me is very verbal language, like it's constantly chattering and talking and things like that. But that's not how, like, I feel it more in my body when it's not being hijacked from the mind. But like, I don't know, I'm trying to define what is the language of the body. And I think, does everybody have their own language of how their heart speaks to them? Like, is that an individualistic thing, do you think? Or is there kind of like...
No, it's always very simple and quiet. And, a lot of A lot of different um, educational tools out there talk about it's usually the first thing you get, but the mind then just booms over the top of it. It is quiet. That book in for me was, because over time I've really got clearer and clearer at defining the mind. I still let it chatter. I still let it say the things that it wants to. It'll never go away. But I'm, it's conscious now. There's very little that's unconscious. And having said that, of course, what was going on here was unconscious to some degree. So to me, that's just another big, got the another wedge of something up and into consciousness, right? So that I can address it and deal with it. So that I can now look at it clearly between the eyes and do something with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I think, I mean, for me, that brings up the thought of the addressing it, like, and this is the reflection, like even through the process of that reflecting back on the old, like the memory, it's like all of these things are guiding you to this point, and it is doing it in a loving and gentle way. Even addressing it is still doing it in a loving and gentle way, not
Yes.
beating yourself up for that.
Yes.
That would be just the mind trying to play another trick on you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, once you're conscious of it, there's no hiding for it anymore, right? You just can't. I
Yeah.
don't know how that works, but that's how it works time and time again. So now I've got its number, and it's like I can see you, I can address you. Yeah, just move aside because I'm doing this. I mean, and that gets you to then look back on the language it was using, like, fancy saying, I don't want to be with a pack of stupid women at a retreat.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, that's the mind language. But at the time, when you're feeling all sorts of things going on, it can just slip right under your radar.
Mm-hmm.
But now I can see it all for what it is. So that tells me I've got this thing right in my sights, and it doesn't have any control over me once I'm aware of what was going on.
And that's kind of your entire journey, right? This is what the book is about. It's like you become aware, you take control, you assess the situation, you reassess the situation, you put a wedge in the mind's control over you, and then you move on to the next phase, which is repeating the same thing in a different way.
Absolutely. You're right. Yeah, you're right. And that made me look back at, what is the book about, right? The book's about that, once upon a time, I realized that there was something else at work. There was something else listening to me, something else watching me, something else guiding me, something that knew better than I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. The book is about various events, significant events, where whatever that was got my attention time and time again. And what I then did was I had to get to know it. I had to get to know what is that? Yeah. To me, I call it God.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a million different names for it, but to me, I called it God. So I had to get to know that it was there. Then I had to get to trust it. So I had to test that out. And the book is about how I did that time and time again. Then I had to follow it. Remember, I say to you now, it's like there's just breadcrumbs. I just wait for the next breadcrumb and I follow it, right? And the reason why is because it'll never, ever let me down.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm writing a book, so that I can share all of what that's about.
Or it's not like anyone goes, oh gosh, I'm so glad I didn't listen to my intuition.
Say that again.
I'm just thinking, like, people lament and they review their lives and they always say, God, I wish I hadn't have done this, but they rarely say, like they'll say, I wish I'd listened to my instincts, or I wish I'd listened to that voice inside of me. They don't say, well, I'm so sad I listened to that voice inside of me,
Yeah, never.
Yeah.
Never.
It is the consistent all the way through your life.
Yes.
I mean, it is like, it reminds me a bit of that the story of the Jesus walking in footprints in the sand, you know, and then they're like, why did you abandon me? You know, when there's only one set of footprints. But then God says, well, that was when I was carrying you.
Yeah, because it started off with 2 sets of footprints in the sand, and then it turned into one. And that's right. We, the poor lost souls, go, why did you abandon me? And you're right. Yeah, because you just said, well, you know, I started carrying you.
Yeah. And that's just so beautiful. I mean, that just makes me want to cry, because you always have someone in your corner, no matter what you've done or how stupid you were or the choices you made, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's not how it works. It just loves you.
Yeah. And that is what I completely trust in now. Where the start of the book, I was like, gosh, there was even one stage in my life where I nearly went to say out loud, somebody asked me if I believed in God, and I was about to reply and go, no, I'm an atheist, right? But I got, no, and truly there was something in me that stopped, because for some reason I felt that if I said it out loud, it would put something into action. You ever had that feeling?
Yeah, the power of the declaration.
Yeah. And again, it'll be in the book. I've had times where I've just said, stop me doing this. And an event comes up that stops me doing what I was asking to be stopped from doing. But what I highly recommend to people once they do read that part of the story is you really should give it more detail. You should give a bit of an explanation on how you might want to be stopped, because sometimes when it comes along, you go, oh my gosh, wouldn't have asked for this. All right. So look, I hope that wasn't too all over the shop, but it was really about the mind, guys, the mind, and how powerful it is, and how it can steer you down a path where it, you know, you think you're doing all the right things and all these different signs and stuff, and it can really be leading you up the garden path.
And I think that, I mean, for me, one of the biggest things that stood out was the quiet certainty of that voice, you know, and I'm sure I know I can list dozens off the top of my head situations where I have that initial quiet voice that tells me the answer, and then my mind jumps in, and then it makes me feel this, and then it blah blah blah, and then it blah blah blah.
Moment's gone.
Correct, but its echoes still there. I still know what that piece of information was. You know, just like you knew, you know, do the 48-hour.
Yeah, make the commitment.
Yeah.
The commitment. Absolutely. There's no need for any other preparation or anything else. It's just make that commitment and get this happening, because I want to share all these experiences, because that's how I got to being where I'm at. And if I can help anybody else to master their mind and get themselves on this beautiful path that they're destined to be on, job done. All right. Thank you, everybody. Honestly, this time I'd like to ask if anybody's got any feedback, put it under the YouTube post, or put it on the Facebook post or the Instagram post, because I'd really love to get some conversation going about all this, because this needs to get out there. It needs to get legs.
It does. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks again, Kath, for all your little questions and answers as well.
Thank you, Helen, for sharing your beautiful story.
All right. See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.